Heroes of Might and Magic 3, a almost 22-year-old turn-based strategy game that has truly stood the test of time. Even today, thousands of people are playing in the online lobby, and countless others are enjoying a vast array of fan-made custom maps in single player. And having such a large fan base still playing the game after this many years, you would think that there aren't a lot of surprises left to uncover. And yet, there are still some mysteries out there which remain hidden. This is one of those mysteries. Mainly, it's the story of how I faced the Heroes 3 AI enigma. As time has gone by, people have come up with a lot of different strategies to exploit the game's AI. Some of them simple, like taking a graveyard full of 90 zombies with just one angel, and some of them a bit more complex, like taking a max-size imp cache with just one pixie. What almost all of these strategies have in common is that they are highly consistent, although some of them can be affected by good or bad morale. If you memorize the patterns required to take these objectives, the AI will behave the same way every time. In other words, if the player follows the script for a specific strategy setup, the AI will follow that same script. But a few weeks ago, I decided to replay an old fan-made custom map, and this is where I found something very strange. This rule of following the script apparently does not apply when you are up against an AI hero. You would think, like I did, that if I repeat a battle against an AI hero, say 10 times, and I do the exact same actions every time, that the AI would also respond the exact same way every time. Well, to my amazement, that is not the case. And to make matters worse, the more I tried to find sense in what the AI was doing, the more confused I became. And so I embarked on a journey to find meaning in the chaos. And this is where the mystery only grew. Let me start from the beginning. Throughout the years, many great fan-made challenge maps have been created for this timeless game, and one in particular stands out from the rest. I am, of course, talking about Wayfarer, the highest rated map on mapsforheroes.com, created around 10 years ago in August of 2010. A truly legendary map that to many bring back fond memories and sleepless nights. Very hard to find a way. It's an extremely tough journey. My hero, can you still sweep away all obstacles? An extremely tough journey indeed. You start off completely alone in the middle of the wilderness and have to think and fight your way through a series of puzzles to get to your first town. From this newly formed base, you explore the surrounding area and acquire the skills and spells necessary to continue your journey. As you leave the safe compounds of your starting island, you have to navigate your way through swamps where gorgons, witches, and beastmasters reside. Then through snowy mountaintops populated by giants and titans with thick golden armor. Or, as Gimli would put it,
rabble of mindless
giants.
These are
Titans.
their armor is thick and their shields broad.
Well, they don't have shields, but you get the point. Should you find yourself victorious up to this point, well, don't worry, your journey has only just begun. This gigantic masterpiece is a true trial by fire for any Heroes 3 player, novices and veterans alike. And speaking of veteran Heroes 3 players, let's have a look at how one of them handled his very first playthrough of Wayfarer.
Having fun? Yeah, quite a bit. What? How does that work? This targeting is bulk turns, but you shouldn't be fastest. What is going on? What just happened? What the hell? What? What? What is going on? Why don't they move? They don't get turns. They glitch out. They what? It happens. What do you mean it happens? What happens? They're berserk, but they're not attacking anything. Happens. What happened? What happened? I'm so confused. What the hell happened? What happened here was unfair. Why did the dragons glitch? Why did the dragons glitch? I got...
Yeah, Wayfarer do be like that sometimes. And as I slowly watched Lexi abandon Reason for Madness, I decided to replay the map myself. Having played it a few times before, I thought it would be a walk in the park. And it was. Until I got to Nilah, that is. Although the start of the map is a challenge in and of itself, it is nothing compared to Nilah, who is undoubtedly the toughest opponent in the entire map. Having beaten her before, I thought a couple of tries would do it. But somehow I spent over 30 minutes fighting Nilah, increasingly getting more frustrated with every failed attempt, trying all kinds of different strategies, before I finally took her down in what seemed to be a fluke. And so I asked myself the question, why is this particular battle so hard? And does it all just come down to being fortunate with morale and luck, or does a guaranteed setup exist? For those of you who have not had the pleasure of playing this great map, let me give you some important context. The beginning of the map is somewhat challenging, but the difficulty really spikes when you reach the Nilah battle. Afterwards, the difficulty drops down, and then a smaller spike occurs when you have to face off against Drakon later on in the map. After this battle, however, the rest of the map is fairly straightforward and quite repetitive, besides having to play a fair amount of hide and seek. The battles, however, are quite easy, and this is mainly because of one strategy, which we might appropriately call the Wayfarer strat. The Wayfarer strat consists of 3 steps. Step 1. Blind all your opponent's troops. Step 2. Resurrect all your own troops. And Step 3. Take down your opponent's troops one by one, making sure to blind before he can get to act on his turn. And there you have it. A foolproof strategy that will serve you well for the remaining parts of the map. Now, there are several problems with using the Wayfarer strat against Nilah. For one, she has a huge stack of titans, which, coincidentally, are immune to the blind spell. The even bigger stack of iron golems are also quite the problem, since they, likewise, can't be blinded. On top of this, Nilah has almost every spell in the game available to her, and one in particular is very problematic, namely the sacrifice spell. You see, if you somehow manage to take down all of her titans without being wiped out yourself, you might get the idea that you are close to victory. Just take down the iron golems and the Wayfarer strat can be put to work. But then, the unthinkable happens. Nilah sacrifices her Archmagi in order to bring back her entire stack of titans. And just like that, you're back to square one. So in order to pull off a successful Wayfarer strat, you have to take down her Archmagi, then the titans, and then the iron golems, before you can finally breathe and resurrect all of your casualties. This is easier said than done. I was convinced that there had to be a better way, and so I went into the archives to see if someone has documented a consistent way of beating Nilah, and I did find one promising video. Richard Chen has made a legendary video series with mind-boggling strategies on how to exploit the Heroes 3 AI. And in some of his videos, he even uses examples from the map Wayfarer. And as luck would have it, One of the strategies he demonstrates is against our very own Nilah. The strategy aims to trap the troops in her castle, then exhaust all the Titan's shots while simultaneously draining all of Nilah's mana. So I decided to try it out and follow his advice step by step. And after doing so, I still lost. No matter what I did, his strategy simply would not work. Most of the time, I would struggle to destroy the catapult before it made a hole in the wall. Sometimes, the genies would simply fly out and kill me. And other times, she would clone her titans, making the damaged tank much harder. There is no doubt in my mind that this tactic works, but the main thing is that this strategy seems to only be viable under very, very specific conditions. So it got me thinking, is it possible to come up with a consistent strategy to take out Nilah? And so I set out to do just that. Let me mention one quick thing first before I continue. This is not the early 2000s, when the Shadow of Death expansion was released. I hope I'm not the first to tell you that. It's 2021, and today we have some great tools available for everybody who enjoys to play Heroes 3 and who wants to make it even more enjoyable. I am of course talking about the HD Plus mod, which lets you easily manage creatures and artifacts, and the Shadow of Death SP plugin. Some of the most useful features with this plugin include turbo combat speed, and of course, being able to assign hotkeys to spells, which greatly cuts down the time spent resurrecting units and casting spells in general. With that out of the way, my journey to find a consistent strategy to defeat this impeccable foe began. I first tried the barbarian way of thinking and simply stormed against Nilah head on while she was hiding in her castle. But no matter what I did, my attempts were short-lived against the might of the Titans and Nilah's armorer specialty. To take her head on, I would require Cyclops Kings numbered in the several hundreds, even thousands.
Tens of thousands.
But my lord, there is no such force.
No, that would take way too long to get. Also, the ground under the castle is covered in magic planes, which means that all spells are cast on an expert level. This could be beneficial if I were to try and use a Master Genie strategy on her, but it is also very RNG dependent, since there are 21 possible spells the genies can cast, plus the fact that Nilah and her Master Genies also benefit from the magic planes. The obvious strategy was of course to take the castle Nilah was hiding in and defend it against her attack. That way I could be sure that her Nagas and golems could not reach me. And yet, this strategy turned out to be way too random. Mainly because of the Master Genie spellcasting and also Nilah's catapult, which would often just break the gate wide open in the first round. I was not able to find any consistency from this position. As my number of attempts grew and grew, I started to notice some strange things. And this is where the true enigma part in all of this comes in. As I was going through one strategy setup after another, I noticed that sometimes I would make what would seem to be identical moves, and yet Nilah's response would change dramatically. At first, I just attributed these anomalies to the inherent RNG that comes from morale and luck, and of course the Master Genie spellcasting. But as I was zeroing in on a potentially viable setup, these strange responses piqued my curiosity. And so I decided to do a little test to find out exactly what was going on. The parameters for the test were quite simple. I would fight Nilah 100 times and defend all of my troops in the first round. Then I would record how the AI moved. I would also see if the genies waited their turn, what spell they casted, and who they casted it on. After recording 100 rounds, I sat down and crunched the numbers, and the results were even stranger than I could possibly imagine. I made sure to eliminate the RNG noise that comes from morale and luck with artifacts, and as the AI moved their troops, I marked the different positions as I saw them. Position 1 looks like this, and the AI has a clear preference for the setup, as it was the most common, occurring 60 times out of 100. There is, however, more to this position. You see, out of the 60 occurrences, the AI would wait turn on the genies 42 times and immediately cast a spell with them 18 times. And of those 18 times, it will always cast a spell on the Iron Golems. But more on that in a bit. Position 2 looks like this and was seen 8 times. As you can see, it is very similar to the first one. The golems, gargoyles and nagas are all in the same spot. The genies, however, does not cast any spell and instead moves forward on the battleground. In position 3, the genies once again do not cast any spell, but moves less forward. The gargoyles, however, move even further ahead, and the nagas go down on the battlefield. The AI opted for this setup 21% of the time. Finally, there is position 4, which was seen 7% of the time, and this is a variation of the third position, with the only difference being that the genies this time did cast a spell. These 4 setups combined make up 96% of the possible moves the AI made. Now your obvious question will of course be, how does the last position look like? And this is where the weird gets even weirder. The remaining 4% consists not of 1, but 4 different positions. That's right, position 5, 6, 7 and 8 occur just 1 time each. In the 5th one, the gargoyles move towards the middle. The 6th one is just like the 5th one, with the only difference being that the genies did cast a spell. In position 7, the Iron Golems got hasted by the genies, and along with number 8, where they got fire shielded, which we can only assume is what caused them to move so far ahead on the battlefield in both cases. So to recap, the AI moved its troops in 8 different locations on the battlefield, with a very clear preference for one of those positions. It also has a minor leaning towards another setup, but it also has an inclination to move in what seems to be small variations of the 2 most likely outcomes. But the enigma does not end here. What about the Master Genie spellcasting? Well, this complicates things even more. The genies casted a spell a total of 70 times out of the 100 rounds. 27 of those were cast on the Iron Golems, and the other 43 were cast on the Naga Queens. First thing to note is that the AI never used Bloodlust, Shield, Stoneskin, Prayer or Slayer, which is strange and made me wonder if the AI knew one of these spells were about to be cast and chose not to do so in the 30 times a spell was not casted. That was, anyway, my working theory to begin with, namely that the AI always knows what spell the genies are going to cast and uses that information appropriately. Here is how the genies distributed their spellcasting, and as you can see, this chart both confirms and rejects my theory. The green fields in the chart marks spells where the AI has a clear preference on whether to use it on the Iron Golems or the Naga Queens. But then again, these are not 100% certain because of the yellow marked spells. With this group of spells, the AI has some degree of bias on who the spells should be casted on, but nothing can be concluded. In this category, the haste spell is particularly problematic, for as you might recall, the AI casted haste on the Iron Golems just once, which created a whole new position for the troops to appear in. Finally, we have the group marked with red, which accounts for the fire shield spell. where the AI absolutely knows the spell is coming and will always cast it on the Naga Queens. Except for that one time where it gave it to the Iron Golems and as such created yet another alternate position on the battleground. Okay, thanks Neela. As you can clearly see, there is some sense to be found in what the AI is doing, but at the same time, random, unexplainable anomalies occur more frequent than I first thought. So I once again dived into the archives to see if someone has documented why these strange occurrences happen. But this time, I came up empty-handed.
Impossible. Perhaps the archives are incomplete.
There was very little to be found on the AI subject matter. One of the things mentioned is that the AI from the beginning of the game is assigned one of 3 different roles that will determine its behavior: Builder, Warrior, or Explorer. But as I understood it, these roles only have an impact on how the AI behaves on the adventure map itself. Whether it seeks to build their town, explore the map as much as possible, or how aggressive it will be in seeking out fights, but not how it behaves in combat. It was, however, written that the difficulty setting had an impact on the AI's behavior, and that it got progressively smarter for every difficulty level. On Hard, Expert, and Impossible, the AI will take into account the range of the enemy troops and use this information tactically. But no other specifics on combat tactics were given. So all of this had put me in an awkward position, because as we have just explored, there is no way to consistently defeat Neela in battle, which is exactly what makes it the toughest fight in the entire map. And so it would seem that it is indeed impossible to find a setup that works 100% of the time. But I did find a strategy that works fairly well, and here is the recipe. I assume that you have already found the Bow of the Sharpshooter and the Tomb of Earth Magic, which you are definitely going to need. The remaining piece of the bow is just south of Neela's castle, and the book is located south of the swamp area, guarded by ancient behemoths. When it comes to units, you will need a fairly undiluted stack of Cyclops Kings and ancient behemoths. And by undiluted, I mean that you should have had a close of no losses in these 2 stacks up until this point in the map. If you have taken some big losses, you might have to wait a few weeks before this works. In other words,
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
you are also going to need as many Thunderbirds as you can get, a minimum of 1 Archmagi, and at least 2 1-stacks of Master Genies, along with 1 Enchanter. The Enchanter can be replaced by another Genie if you don't have one. Since Neela is somewhat of a coward and constantly hides in her castle, the easiest way to face her is by standing around this fortune spring and have her attack you. Once in combat, your troops have to be positioned this way to first make sure your Cyclops Kings are protected, second to have your Behemoths in range to strike the Titans, and thirdly to make sure Neela's troops are distracted by the Master Genies in case they morale and get an extra turn. Since Neela will always cast Air Shield as her first spell, we want to make sure that the Kings get 1 full damage shot on the Titans by casting slow as soon as the battle begins. The 2 Genies should then buff the Kings, and the Thunderbirds have to strike the first stack of Titans in order to take the retaliation off, so the Behemoths can hit cost-free later on. Wait the Behemoths for now, and let Neela make her moves. Then strike the Titans. In round 2, you have to start off by blinding the Naga Queens, use the Master Genies on the Behemoths, and with them strike the other stack of Titans from below, so you also block the Magi. Then shoot the Archmagi with the Kings. What will happen now, at least a fair amount of time it will, is that Neela's Genies, Golems and Gargoyles will gather around the Behemoths and all try to take them down. Now remember that it's all about getting to the Wayfarer position. So from here on out, you should blind the Genies, then the Gargoyles, while taking down the remaining Archmagi. Once this is done, focus all your attacks on the Iron Golems while keeping the Behemoths alive with the Resurrection spell. Neela can respond in a lot of different ways. If she uses this spell at this point, the strategy is most likely not going to work. If she starts summoning elementals, it might get tricky, but there is still hope. With this strategy in hand, you can expect to win around 50% of the time. I did the full battle 20 times and got into the Wayfarer position 10 times. Results may vary. I know, winning only half the time is not very impressive, but that is the best I could do given Neela's mysterious random tendencies.
Maybe half? Like I'd be able to go jogging.
half? Half?
Half, yeah.
So, in conclusion, we still don't know how the AI exactly makes decisions in battles. Somebody had observed that the AI has a tendency to behave strange when Master Genies are involved in combat. And given the data I have gathered, they might indeed be the culprit behind these strange anomalies, but that still remains uncertain. But then again, maybe that is exactly what the AI wants us to think. Maybe we have unknowingly created a monster we no longer can control. And for the past 22 years, we have all been training it by simulating battle after battle after battle. Nice try, Neela, aka Crazy Ivan. Or should I call you?
Skynet has become self-aware. In 1 hour, it will initiate a massive nuclear attack on its enemy.
What enemy? Us! Humans!
And there you have it. The Heroes 3 AI Enigma. How does the AI exactly work in combat? Why does it do the things it does? Are we all just at the mercy of the master RNG genies, or is something else at work? We simply don't know. More testing is required, and probably some programming knowledge. And who knows, maybe someday we will be able to solve this mystery. Now, if you would do me a favor and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
What do you mean it happens? It doesn't!
Toxic streamer.
Toxic! These dragons are toxic! I'm toxic! Maybe I'm a little bit toxic too, but damn!